How I want to start out tonight is I want to take you back about 3 years. And it just so happened that the Crescent team, along with a lot of land planners and other very smart people that help us master plan communities, were sitting in this very room studying the 1,400 acres that we're about to look at tonight. So it's just funny how things happen for a reason when we're here. This is a very special place. I think we all like to come to the Whitewater Center for the excitement, and really brings people together, and that's really what we're trying to do at the River District, is really create a regional destination. So not just another neighborhood, not just a subdivision, but a place that attracts people from all over the region and really all over the U.S. So I'm going to talk about a theme here tonight. You know, what if we created a place? And I won't keep saying it, but just keep that in the back of your mind about this is something big, this is something special that we're going to talk about tonight. So the River District, about 1,400 acres of undeveloped forest land. As you can see, it's not too far from uptown Charlotte, about 9 miles on the outer belt of 485 at the West Boulevard interchange. So you'd be hard pressed if you looked all across the U.S. to find another 1,400 acres like the River District that sits so close to a thriving urban center and one of the busiest airports in the U.S. and even in the world. Again, it's within minutes of the 6th busiest international airport, which I think a lot of us take for granted. It really is an asset that continues to attract employment and people to live here. You virtually can get anywhere in the U.S. On a direct flight with 700 flights a day leaving Charlotte Douglas. As you can see, it's very well connected to 85, 485, 77. So from a regional connectivity standpoint, you can be in Huntersville in 20 minutes, you can be in Fort Mill in 20 minutes, you can be uptown in 20 minutes. And don't forget our neighbors to the west here with Belmont and Gaston County. So as we think about drawing a large labor pool and a large amount of people to live at the River District, that connectivity is just unparalleled. So what if we had created a place that was really established, and the founding principle was the natural environment and the special land that we have here. You know, we started out 3 years ago by walking the property and truly mapping the unique characteristics of the property, the streams, the unique forest, the topo, the riverfront, all these things that we really wanted to preserve and really leverage as an asset so all community members and really the public could come enjoy as well, from hiking and mountain biking and getting on a canoe and kayak on the water. We really want this to be a public place that the whole region and the city of Charlotte experiences. So what we've done is we put about 40% of the property in open space. That's about 550 acres. So you will feel like you're living or working in a park no matter where you are. You're always going to have this connectivity to a great trail network and to wooded areas. So just something unique that a lot of places don't have. As we think about vehicles, we also want to plan for the connectivity of moving people around the site, amongst the neighborhoods, amongst the retail, amongst the employment center, not by just car, but also by bike and by foot. So what we're doing here is we're laying out a plan that's well connected via bike lanes, buffered bike lanes, shared use paths, greenways, mountain bike trails, hiking trails. So really, you can get anywhere within the site without having to actually get in a vehicle and drive to work or drive to the restaurant or drive to shopping. So that's something we think people really want to do, is leave their car at home and get out on foot or on bike and experience a place like that. So if you think about families moving, going out on a bike ride, or if you think about riding your bike to work versus having to get in a car and drive to work, I mean, if you do that, it's really a decompressing feeling, and a lot of people are craving that, as you've seen a lot of people move back to the urban areas to be able to walk or to be able to use mass transit as well. So this was a very unique opportunity in the fact that 1,400 acres are under control, and we have the ability to actually master plan it. So to really think about how the roadway should work, where police go, where fire go, where the schools go, how the office is and how it relates to the residential and the retail, to really create a dynamic place. I'm sure you've all experienced some of the great mixed use environments here in Charlotte and really all across the U.S. And they continue to be a leader to attract a price premium and that people really flock to have an experience. And that what we're trying to do is use real estate to create experience and to create a very dynamic and diverse environment here at the River District. Very much so, we understand that schools play a very large role in selling real estate and selling homes. Everyone wants access to high quality education, public education, as well as other educational opportunities. So we have a commitment through working with the River District to CMS to have 2 school sites. Could be 2 elementaries, could be an elementary and a middle. We'll see really as over time and as the plan unfolds and really what the need is for schools. So we have a commitment to work with CMS along the way as we plan. One thing that will be very unique about the River District is leveraging the outdoors and the natural environment as an outdoor sort of laboratory or learning environment, and really focusing a curriculum around that. So something different other than just learning in your classroom is a very compelling opportunity. So what if we created a place that was for everyone? So let's think about all the people that are in Charlotte and all the people that are coming to Charlotte. You know, it really spans a large demographic and a large age group with all varying needs of the type of life experience they want, the type of housing experience they want, and really, you know, the type of environment they want. You know, we've got a saying that you know, grandchildren are the new beach. You know, typically saw your parents or grandparents flocking to coastal destinations and to the beach, but you're really seeing them move back to where their kids are and to where their grandkids are. I say that and I laugh because my parents did that as well. So they moved down to Charleston and they ended up moving back to Charlotte to be close to us. So I think you're seeing that. You're seeing millennials flock here, and then eventually they have kids and their parents show up. So a lot of in-migration to Charlotte, and all have varying housing needs. So what we plan to do is really offer a great segmentation of products, floor plans, and types of housing at the River District, from rental property all the way up to a retirement home or a continuing care retirement community. So what does all this mean? You know, in the long run, how we're planning it and how we're really focusing on public areas and access to the river. You know, planning for transportation over the long run and what that means to make sure that it's not going to be a congested area from the beginning, and building appropriate amount of infrastructure from a roadway perspective so cars can get around without having you know, major congestion issues. As I mentioned before, a highly accessible employment center with 8 million square feet of office, and we'll put that into perspective, and I know Ed will show some comparisons on what that actually means. But again, providing those neighborhood retail and amenities is key as well to attract residents and to continue to attract employment to the area. And you know, the single thing that we're focused on at Crescent, especially having a home building company, Fielding Homes, is to offer a wide range of housing. So Fielding Homes will build homes out here, as well as work with other third-party builders to bring in other types of floor plans and types of product that Fielding Homes does not necessarily build. So I've already let the secret out, and you already know, but what would this place be called if we were to put all this together? And it is a very fitting name in terms of the River District. With the access to the river and the fact that it's going to be built over a very long time with different types of districts and villages and hamlets and neighborhoods and destinations all within one large district. And we actually think that the River District over time grows to beyond the 1,400 acres that we're contemplating here. It probably becomes really the whole north and south area from Berwick, you know, all the way up to Wilkinson Boulevard. So the ownership here at the River District, so again, we are in a partnership with Lincoln Harris. Lincoln Harris controls about 350 acres. I'm sure you all are aware of Lincoln Harris, a local development firm, very good at developing office. Crescent has historically done mixed use and residential, so it's really a perfect marriage between two backyard local developers here to really create something special at the River District. So that's how the property configuration and the ownership lays out. That large piece in the middle with the river access is a city parcel. It's about 130 acres. We're actually building trails on that property, biking and mountain biking trails and hiking trails today, as well as to our property. And those are going to be public trails, so anyone can come out and experience those. We want to get people out to the River District really before rooftops appear or anything else gets developed out there. The map on the right-hand side, I think you all are familiar with Berwick. A few things you might not know about it It is the top-selling master plan community in all of Charlotte. I think they're doing roughly about 300 starts, 300 closings a year. They're on the last few phases. They're almost sold out. It's the number 26 best-selling master plan community in the entire U.S. That says a lot about how successful Bearwick has been. And if you've been out here recently, you know that the Bearwick Town Center is thriving and really coming to life with the new Harris Teeter and hotels and the outlet. So we're fortunate to have that about a mile south of our property. Whereas traditionally, you got to build all these rooftops before a grocery store comes, before your neighborhood retail comes. We have the luxury of really leveraging all that's been done at Bearwick and the success of they've had there. And truly, when they come to a closing, we can pick back up and start offering homes at varying price ranges and styles to really leverage the tailwind that they've created at Bearwick. Roger hit on this a little bit. So we went through the rezoning back in 2016, so last year. Got rezoning approval in November. Ed was very instrumental in guiding us along the way. We worked with a lot of different city departments, regional departments as well, the county, the Catawba River Keeper, a lot of environmental groups to really come up with a very sensible master plan for the property that included a lot of entitlement. 8 million square feet of office, that's about 50,000 employees. So that's a lot of jobs. About 4,600 residential units, which is about a 50-50 split between multifamily apartment and single-family for-sale housing. We've got the ability to do about 500,000 square feet of retail, so that would include your grocery store, your neighborhood services, and shops and restaurants and breweries, things like that. About 1,000 hotel rooms, given the proximity to the airport and knowing that there's going to be continued need for hotel rooms as well as the employment leveraging those hotel rooms. We've got a great opportunity to build some new hotels out at the River District. And 75 acres of civic uses, so that's your schools and your police and your fire. So it's about, all that's going to fit on about 827 developable acres. So it is going to be a very dense environment surrounded by wooded areas and streams and corridors. So you're always going to have kind of pockets, as you can see here, pockets of density and development that are all connected via a natural environment. So you're always going to see trees, always have access to the trails, and really feel like you're living or working in a park setting. This is a little bit of an eye chart, but we used a group called RCLCO, Robert Charles Lesser and Companies, to really help us understand who our market audience might be from a housing perspective, and understanding kind of who that demographic is, what their needs are in terms of purchase motivations, their product preference, whether that's a townhome, alley load, or a wider residential single-family lot, and understanding kind of what's been successful in the market and making sure we include those product types, but also looking outside of the Charlotte market and understanding other mixed-use master plan communities all across the U.S. and how they've had success at offering products that necessarily aren't here in Charlotte. So we have the ability to bring other product types, whether it's a duplex, whether it's a triplex, whether it's kind of cluster homes, or lower impact kind of cottage homes to the River District. And this is just a variety of the recommendations on the various housing products for the River District. So these all won't be offered at once, but it really helps us kind of plan accordingly as we look at the master plan and as we kind of identify certain areas within the River District for varying housing types. This is priority. I haven't really shown this yet, so this is good though. This is the first phase of the River District. So one thing we didn't talk about was the amount of infrastructure that's going to be needed to activate the River District. Today there's no water, there's no sewer. Everything's on well and everything's on septic. So Ed's studying the plan right now. I know he's going to critique this after we're done. He's not seen this. But we're working on infrastructure right now. So the road to the south here, and I'm just going to point it out, this is West Boulevard. So that's going to be about a mile-long road that connects Dixie River Road back to the interchange, back to 485. Today, if you were to get off West Boulevard and try to go west towards the river or west towards Dixie River Road, you come pretty much to a dead end. So back in 2016, a $16 million roadway was approved through bonds to finish that West Boulevard connection that would really tie the heart of the River District to 485, so you'll have very good connectivity. So this is the first phase. It's very much a high-density mixed-use phase. We've got about 600 units of multifamily between affordable workforce housing as well as market rate for rent. And then we've got a variety of townhomes and as well as detached single-family lots, about 50,000 square feet of retail, about 20,000 square feet of office. Really all centered around Block F, if you can see that. It's kind of in the lower left-hand side of that concept plan, and that's going to be a small-scale farm. So what we're going to do is we're going to leverage about an 1.5 acre organic farm to really get people out there to understand where their food comes. So it's a health and wellness sort of programming opportunity as well as education opportunity. You know, most children don't really realize where their food comes from or how it's grown. It just doesn't, you know, magically show up at Harris Teeter. It comes from somewhere. So teaching children how things grow and the importance of healthy foods is really critical in what we want to do from a programming element. And then, you know, how about we have a brewery attached to this farm, and they're using ingredients that are coming off the farm into beer. I see many people are enjoying, you know, craft beer tonight. It's all the rage. So having a brewery as a destination as well that's attached to a farm is a really interesting concept we're pursuing as well. So that farm is likely going to start development next summer. Not all this is going to happen at once. We've got to get water and sewer and roads out here before all the buildings can happen, so we're going to be able to flush toilets, but we will start this farm and get people out there experiencing the River District next year. This is a kind of zooming back up to 30,000 feet, just a high-level master plan concept of what we call the overall phase 1 of the River District. So that's about 1,000 residential units and about 1 million square feet of office and about 75,000 square feet of retail. The area that I just pointed out to you guys is right here. So 485 West Boulevard ties into Dixie River Road, that north and south road that leads you down into to Berwick. That's that road section that'll get built, and that's our first phase right where West Boulevard terminates into Dixie River Road. And we'll likely study the southern section of Dixie River Road, so right north of Berwick for a residential area as well. So timing, I know that's another big question probably you all have. You know, we're working on the water and sewer and roadway agreements with the city to get the extensions done. They've been a great partner. This is truly going to be the biggest public-private partnership, I think, ever in Charlotte after it's all said and done. So leveraging some city money, leveraging the private side to really create about $3 billion of new tax base, $3 billion with a B, of new tax base in the city of Charlotte. None of this property is in the city today. It's all in the county. So we're going to bring a tremendous amount of property tax base into the city, which is going to create millions of property tax receipts on an annual basis that'll go fund roadways and police and fire, and from the county side, schools as well. So I hope this all you know, paints a good picture. I think we'll get started on infrastructure work the middle of next year, so the water, the sewer, West Boulevard, and really hope to be coming out of the ground with a product, call it late 19, so selling homes in early 2020. I know it seems very far away, but you know, it'll be here before we know it. And we're very, very excited about the River District and what it's going to do for the city and for this region. And as we talked about, we did include this in the submittal for Amazon. I know a lot of sites in the region were. It just so happens they need 8 million square feet of office. We have 8 million square feet of office. So, you know, maybe that's meant to be, and I don't know. But well, I think early December we hear back, you know, maybe who the final cut is or who the next cut of cities are. And we're really hoping the River District is attractive to them because we've got great housing and office and retail and the ability for all this to function within one. So really you never have to get in your car and leave. You can just live here, work here, play here, recreate here. So really excited about the River District and hope that gave you guys a little bit of information and happy to answer questions at the end. But again, appreciate your time and appreciate you being here this evening.
So again, I'm Ed McKinney. I'm the interim planning director for the city of Charlotte. What I'd like to do today is maybe take a step back from what Creighton just did and give you a sense of the kind of long-term intention we've had for the west side of Charlotte, put the River District kind of in context. And you know, one of the things I'd say from our perspective is it's really thinking about the long-term growth of Charlotte. And I've got stats here on the slide. I mean, this is probably a crowd that understands the growth of Charlotte, right? You're driven by our growth. And for us, it's making sure that we've got a plan for that growth, that we're really intentional about where we want it to go, that we think about the opportunity and the aspiration that gives us. So it's not really just about accommodating growth. For us, it's making sure that we use it as an opportunity to really shape the kinds of places. Creighton just described a really great opportunity to shape a really unique place in Charlotte with the energy around that opportunity of growth. To give you some context, as you probably have heard some of this terminology, 44 people per day is essentially kind of the level of growth that we're seeing. You add that up for 20 years, that gets you to about 300,000 people. 300,000 people is equivalent to some pretty significant cities around the country. So just think about that from the perspective in the next 20 years. We've got to, as a city, figure out how to essentially accommodate a whole new city within our region. And so, again, the notion of the River District, the opportunity that Creighton has described, is a big part of how we would do that, and a big part of really taking advantage of that opportunity, that aspiration to be a unique place and to really drive economic development. The way we do that is I get a little wonky and take you from a kind of step out from the city perspective. The way we do that is we really do have a sense of where we want growth to occur in Charlotte. The diagram I have up here is sort of a simple version of lots of policies and approved plans that the council has put in place over the years that have the intention of making sure that we put growth where we want it to go, that we put infrastructure to support that growth, and that we then act on that and partner when we need to partner with the private investment to make sure that we implement that. This diagram in the purple shows our transit corridors. You've got in the center of that is Uptown, so we've obviously the economic engine and the kind of employment center is Uptown, and from that come these transit corridors that long-term will connect us to the region. And then throughout that diagram, you see a set of centers that are sort of interspersed amongst our neighborhoods. I want to highlight where we are. So if you take that west side of Charlotte, what it is really part of a kind of a constellation of opportunities that center themselves in many ways around the airport. And a big part of, as Craig was describing, the big part of what the River District is about, it's part of that constellation of the investment and the growth and the opportunity that airport provides us on the west side. And again, we've been intentional about that. We thought about and have been thinking about the growth of that airport and the relationship of Steel Creek, of Bearwick, and ultimately long-term places like the River District and how it fits into that growth pattern. Being really intentional about finding where those opportunities are and thinking about the partnerships. Again, Creighton gave you kind of the last 3 years of kind of work around the River District. I want to take you back a few more years and talk about the thoughts and the implementation we've had around the west side. And again, talk particularly around the airport. Back in '96, we had a strategic plan around the airport that talked about the new runway that's now in place, that talked about the intermodal center that's now in place, that talked at that point 485 wasn't complete. So there was a tremendous amount of infrastructure that was happening in the airport and the transportation system around that to support the growth, and ultimately envisioned development, this kind of western, the notion of western development between 485 and the river. I've highlighted in yellow the geography of the River District. So even back in '96, we had anticipated with the investment we were making in the airport that development would follow, and that we needed to make sure that we had a plan for how that would work. Specifically, we spent a lot of time thinking about that area between, this is what was called the Dixie-Berry Hill area, the area between 485 and the river. Again, sort of putting the River District on top of that, but you see in these colors was the notion that around the interchanges and around that transportation infrastructure, we would have opportunities for employment, for mixed-use development that would then provide the foundation for residential communities surrounding it. Ultimately, though, making sure that we were very thoughtful about the relationship of this development to the uniqueness of the land, right? The river. Creighton talked a lot about what River District is in its name, and just the opportunity to provide access to that river, not just for the community of folks that will live there, but ultimately for the city as a whole. So that river, the Catawba River for us, is a pretty unique asset and is a big driver for how we were thinking about development on the west side, particularly in this area. Now I'm going to take you to, just in the last couple of years, some new thinking, some pretty dramatic investment thinking that's happening around the airport. And I want to put, again, River District in context of that. So there is a multi-billion-dollar plan that the airport is in the middle of new investment. That will include an additional new parallel runway in the long term, some expansion of the intermodal center that's there now, some tremendously expanded new terminal facilities. So the airport continues to grow. It continues to be a really important part of our regional economy. So it's an investment that we take very seriously. One of the things that they've done over the last couple of years, and it was sort of really, in many ways, it was concurrent to the work we were doing with the River District, was a commercial development strategy for the area around the airport. This diagram they put together describes kind of a sort of a constellation notion of what the drivers around this airport would represent for development around it. You see the River District represented here, 485, that's the airport in the center, but the notion that the lands around the airport are going to be really important opportunities for economic development related to opportunities with the airport. So that would include additional office, distribution work, additional commercial development opportunities that ultimately would be connected to be part of this notion of how the River District would fit into it. So we spent a lot of time making sure that we had a thought about how the River District would fit into that map of where development was happening around the airport, and how would we balance the notion of land use, where do we want to put infrastructure, how would we support all of these things happening over the long term. It's pretty dramatic. This is a zoom in. I'll just take you to the south. This notion of a tremendous amount of opportunity that exists south of the airport, directly tied and kind of related to the River District. This is an image of what that could kind of conceptually look like in 20 years. Through the center of this is West Boulevard. Here's 485, kind of off in the horizon now is River District. So I'm kind of putting it in a different context that we look at just from the development around the airport. And the notion that growth and new development, both office, logistics, some of the retail business, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity just on the other side of the interchange, not including even River District. So there's, the point I'm trying to make here is there's a tremendous long-term growth pattern and kind of an economic engine that's happening in the west side. The River District's going to be a big part of that. But there are other drivers, and there's some really important connections that are being made. So there's a lot of really intentional thought and planning and partnerships that we're trying to put in place today to make this whole area, the west side of Charlotte, successful and a big part of our regional economy in the long term. Let me then talk about a little bit how do we do that. It gets really, it's great described. So we're now in the phase, and we've gone through the entitlements. There's a plan. They're starting to think about the specifics of their first phases. But there's a whole lot of infrastructure that needs to be put in place. This is how it looks today. As Creighton showed you, there's essentially undeveloped 1,400 acres of undeveloped land, almost no road infrastructure that's in there today, and we've got to figure out a way that we weave the public and private infrastructure to deal with the kind of phasing of development and ultimately the long-term growth of the area as a whole. So again, there's the River District. You've got 485, the airport. Long term, I can give you sort of paint a picture, is that ultimately we have a plan about getting transit to the airport itself. Ultimately, that will provide a kind of a regional connection between the airport and uptown and part of our transit system. One of the other things that we are doing relative to the River District, though, the new planning is there is another corridor study underway that will look at alternatives that would test ways that we would get transit to the river district itself. So we want to make sure that we provide a regional transit opportunity, not just to the airport, but ultimately to the river district. We have long-term transportation plans that include improvements to both 485 and 85 in partnership with the state and the federal government. Longer-term parallel connections of Dixie River and Garrison Road that provide kind of the north-south structure on the west side that become a framework for the river district and the development around it. Creighton just maybe briefly touched upon the notion of this kind of extension. One of the big challenges we had was thinking through the long-term east-west connection through the river district from 45 ultimately to Gaston County. That's still in the plan. It's part of their thought in terms of the entitlement of the river district and providing for the space for that road. It becomes a really important way that we connect regionally, ultimately across the Catawba River and connecting to the airport. And that's part of the thinking. And then ultimately that connection, West Boulevard, becomes a really important framework for how we connect the river district back to the city. It provides the sort of the bones of how we would develop around south of the airport, the connection that then becomes the first front door of the river district off from 45, and really makes sure that all of this land now, both the investment we're making in the airport, the private investment in the river district, are connected back to our historic neighborhoods on the west side. And so all the kind of employment opportunities and the residents that live in Charlotte and ultimately would connect and be part of this kind of economic and job growth of the city. The airport obviously is a big driver, the intermodal, all that centers on the notion that West Boulevard becomes a really important part of the long-term infrastructure. That for the airport and for the river district, that made some pretty major changes. There's going to be some new thinking about the alignment of West Boulevard. The new runways that we will be put in place will require us to think differently about where that road goes. So there's a whole a new set of thinking that will provide a unique way to connect from Billy Graham to 45, ultimately to Gaston County, become the kind of the framework for river district in the long term. Back to partnerships. So the notion is we've been intentional about the planning that we've done for 20 years, and now this partnership came along with Crescent and with Lincoln Harris. So the opportunity for us was to find ways that we could support the long-term planning that we had with their private investment, with our public investment. We had anticipated this. So we had anticipated in our capital improvement plan, our capital investment plan, that we would put funding on the west side for road infrastructure. We hadn't defined all the specifics of it. It was designed to be tied to taking advantage of partnerships like this, where we can work interactively with the plans and define what are the best ways to phase that investment and work with the private investment at the same time. For us, and it kind of goes back to this kind of West Boulevard story, it's really ultimately about that first phase of West Boulevard. Creighton already described. That's an important part of how you get from the interchange and really kind of catalyze that first set of phases around the river district. But we're working now in partnership with the development group and their designers to design West Boulevard, to get it implemented, and make sure that's really a first phase of the development that gets all the infrastructure there in place. Again, in partnership. So the public funding of this is a way to catalyze and unlock the $2 billion worth of investment and taxable base that will build for us. It's an important part of how we grow. So if we are growing at the pace that we are growing, we've got to put infrastructure to support it. This is a great story about how we were intentional about that and found the partnerships to make it happen when the opportunity was right. So let me just kind of conclude with a couple of other last things to give you a little bit of perspective and to kind of tie it back to some big things that we're trying to do in the city and thinking about growth and quality places. So context, there's River District, there's the 8 million square feet, that's the 500,000 square feet of commercial. I haven't put the 4,600 residential units, but that just kind of gives you the basic scale and kind of order of magnitude of the entitlement. So there's Ballantyne. It was mentioned that this is, again, of a similar scale. So there's Ballantyne. The map is the same scale, so it gives you a sense of kind of the comparison of it. So Ballantyne's entitled for about 6 million square feet. It's got about 600,000 square feet of commercial. Think about the driver and the long-term growth that's happened around Ballantyne, the residential growth that's spurred in the long term, dramatically changing the south side of Charlotte in just a very short period of time. Another example, so South Park, a little bit different, a little bit maybe more in town, and for folks that are familiar with South Park, it's really a different scale now of infill development. It's becoming more urbanized. But you can see dealing with the same kind of intensity of development, driving investment and driving quality value of neighborhoods around it at a very similar scale. The point here I want to make is that the River District is a huge part of our long-term growth. It's an important part, and it was a great opportunity for us to start with a clean slate, to think about how we would partner and master plan for all the things that we would want to create in a great place in the long term, knowing that 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, this is going to be a really important part of the city, and doing it right now and doing it in the right way is a really important part of how we plan for growth. So the theme I would leave you with is, again, we are intentional about how we're dealing with the fast pace of growth we have in the city. We are constantly looking for partnerships. The important theme I would say to you is that it's really about creating great places. It sounds a little gimmicky. It sounds like I'm trying to sell you. I'm not getting paid by the River District folks. For us, it was a great partnership. We are trying to create great places because it provides great value for us. It's a way to tie the infrastructure that we're putting in place. Clayton hit upon a few things, but I just want to put a few numbers out here. These are some of the results of the work that was happening in partnership. 40% of that land will be protected in open space. We've got 40 acres of dedicated recreational parks that will be part of the Mecklenburg County Park System. 2 school sites that are part of the dedication of that entitlement. 2 sites for police and fire, part of our thinking about the infrastructure of the place in the long term. Opportunity long-term for a transit center connecting it to our regional transit system. And Clayton didn't talk about this, but this is a really important part of the city's mission, is we want our places to be affordable and inclusive for all. And this development made a pretty significant commitment to workforce housing. So again, the theme here is we are making great places. It's a part of being successful in the city of Charlotte. Finding these partnerships are a huge part of that. It's funny, we've been talking about Amazon. I've used this slide in front of council a couple of weeks ago as we were talking about some other work that we're doing. But let's just take a step back with this theme of creating great places. Let's assume we're going to be competing against 238 other cities, right, for Amazon. What are the lessons learned? Whether we get it or not, what that has told us and what the industry is telling us is that to be competitive in the 21st century is to be making great places. It's where businesses want to locate and invest. It's where people want to be. And so the only way we do that is to be intentional with the work that we're doing to find partnerships like we found here, and to really make sure that we're providing really a connection between the public investment we're making, the private investment to create success in the long term. This is my last plug. This now has nothing to do with the River District. I can't go anywhere without talking about this. And it was mentioned earlier in the introduction. So one of the huge things that we're doing at the city in the planning department is we're going to rewrite all of our ordinances, all of the zoning code that governs development. We're going to create something called a Unified Development Ordinance, a UDO. We're doing a bunch of policy work about places, what we're calling Charlotte place types. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I want to put a plug, because this is really important work. It affects all of you in different ways. We want to be out there talking to folks about what that could look like. It's all on this theme about making sure that our future is about creating great places, that we're doing this to be economically successful and competitive. And it's a huge effort to kind of take through all the things that you saw in Clayton's presentation to create the kind of quality the River District is. We want to embed that kind of thinking, that kind of new edge thinking into our ordinances to make sure that we can do that throughout the city and be successful in the long term, and hopefully create great quality places throughout Charlotte. So charlotteudo.org, check it out. If you've got questions, let us know. We'll be back. We're working with a lot of the industry partners to kind of be out and talking more. Ultimately, we'll be engaging you more. It's really a great opportunity for us to really think about the future of the city. So thank you for your time.